The trade station orbiting Kepler 442b buzzed with the usual mixture of alien languages, exotic scents, and the hum of advanced technology. Marcus Chen sat alone at a corner table in the cantina, nursing a drink that tasted like fermented starfruit mixed with battery acid. Around him, dozens of species mingled in the neutral zone that had become a hub for galactic commerce. 3 Zephyrian merchants at the next table were speaking loudly enough for half the cantina to hear. Their serpentine bodies coiled around, specially designed chairs while their forked tongues flicked out to taste the air between words. "Did you hear about the human colony on Zerion Prime?" One hissed, its scales shimmering with amusement. Completely wiped out by the Kralik Syndicate. Not a single survivor. Marcus's grip tightened on his glass, but he kept his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that showing emotion among aliens was often seen as weakness. Humans, another Zephyrian laughed, a sound like steam escaping from a broken valve. They think they can expand into our territories with their primitive weapons and basic technology. The Kraliks probably didn't even need to use their full force. A Vulcani trader nearby, its rocky exterior glowing with internal heat, rumbled in agreement. "I heard they lasted less than 3 standard hours. Kraliks hunter-killers are bred for efficiency. Humans are soft, weak creatures with no natural weapons. They rely too heavily on their crude machines." Marcus took another sip of his drink and glanced around the cantina. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space. Tall, graceful, Etherians with their translucent skin and multiple arms, brutish Gorvak with their armor-plated hides and massive claws, insectoid Threks with compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. Each species had evolved natural advantages that made them formidable in their own right. Humans, by comparison, seemed unremarkable. Average height, no natural armor, claws or enhanced senses, no ability to see in the dark or breathe toxic atmospheres. They required environmental suits for most worlds and had only been part of the galactic community for 50 standard years. "The funniest part," the first Zephyrian continued, "is that they actually thought they could negotiate with the Kraliks, sent diplomatic messages right up until the end. As if the Syndicate cares about human concepts of honor or mercy." Marcus knew about Zerion Prime. He had friends there. Good people who had been trying to build something peaceful on the edge of known space. The colony had been a research station focused on agricultural development, hoping to create food sources for the expanding human population. They had been completely unprepared for the Kraliks' assault. A female Netherian with bioluminescent patches along her blue-scaled arms leaned into the conversation. "Humans are too emotional, too attached to individual lives. Real predators understand that casualties are acceptable for the greater goal. The Kraliks know this. It makes them superior hunters." "Speaking of humans," one of the Gorvak grunted, gesturing toward Marcus with a massive claw. "There's one right there, probably crying into his drink about his pathetic species." The cantina grew quieter as attention focused on Marcus. He could feel dozens of alien eyes studying him, evaluating him like a specimen in a laboratory. Some showed curiosity, others barely concealed contempt. A few seemed genuinely sympathetic, but even their pity felt condescending. Marcus slowly stood up, leaving his drink on the table. He was average height for a human, which made him shorter than most of the other species present. His brown hair was beginning to show gray at the temples, and his dark eyes held an intensity that some mistook for anger, but was actually something much more dangerous. Focus. "You want to know about humans?" he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "You think we're weak because we don't have claws or armor or poison sacs?" The Zephyrian who had started the conversation coiled higher, amused. "Please, little human, enlighten us about your species' hidden strengths. Do you have secret weapons we should fear?" Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We don't need secret weapons. Everything dangerous about humans is right out in the open. You just have to know how to look." He reached into his jacket slowly, making sure not to trigger any of the station's security systems. From an inner pocket, he pulled out a small device no bigger than his thumb. It looked unremarkable. just a piece of gray metal with a few small buttons. This, he said, holding it up, is a human invention. We call it a tracker beacon. Completely harmless by itself. Just sends out a signal that can be detected across interstellar distances. The aliens in the cantina looked confused. Several laughed outright. A beacon? The Vulcani rumbled. This is your demonstration of human superiority? A simple communication device? Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Simple, yes, but effective. You see, I've been placing these on ships throughout this trade station for the past 3 months. Kralix ships, specifically. Ships belonging to the syndicate that destroyed Xerion Prime. The laughter died away. The Netherian's bioluminescent patches began pulsing more rapidly. What are you saying? I'm saying, Marcus replied, pocketing. The device, that I know exactly where every Kralix ship that visited this station has gone. I know their routes, their schedules, their cargo manifests. I know which ones are carrying syndicate leadership, and which ones are just foot soldiers. The silence in the cantina was now complete. Even the background hum of the station's system seemed muted. You think humans are weak because we negotiate instead of attacking immediately, Marcus continued. You think we're foolish because we try diplomacy first. But what you don't understand is that all of that talking and watching and waiting, that's not weakness. That's preparation. He began walking toward the exit, moving with the calm confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. As he reached the doorway, he turned back to face the room full of aliens. The Kralix Syndicate thinks they can hunt humans with impunity. They think we're easy prey because we don't have natural weapons. His smile returned, cold and predatory. They're about to learn that the most dangerous thing about humans isn't our claws or our armor. It's our patience and our memory. Marcus left the cantina, leaving behind a room full of very thoughtful aliens. In the corner, a small device continued transmitting data about Kralix ship movements to a network that stretched across the galaxy. The hunt was about to begin. 3 weeks later, the first Kralix ship disappeared. The Bloodfang was a medium-class hunter-killer, part of a patrol squadron operating near the Vega Nebula. It had been conducting routine sweeps for potential targets when its transponder signal simply vanished from the Syndicate's tracking network. No distress call, no debris field, no witnesses. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Captain Scarthul of the Kralix Syndicate barely noticed the report when it crossed his desk aboard the command ship Devourer. Ships went missing sometimes in the vast emptiness of space. Engine failures, navigation errors, accidents happened even to the most advanced vessels. The Kralix had been the galaxy's premier predators for over 2 centuries. They had conquered dozens of species and claimed thousands of systems. One missing patrol ship was hardly worth investigating. 2 days later, the Razorclaw vanished under identical circumstances. This time, Scarthul paid attention. The Razorclaw had been a newer ship with redundant communication systems and an experienced crew. For it to simply disappear without any trace suggested something more deliberate than mechanical failure. Have we received any reports of hostile activity in those sectors? Scarthul asked his intelligence officer, a lean Kralix with scarred chitinous plates and predator's eyes that never seemed to blink. Nothing confirmed. Captain, the officer replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. There are unverified rumors from some of the trade stations. Stories about human activity, but nothing concrete. Scarthul's forearms moved in a dismissive gesture. Humans? The soft-skins barely have the technology to maintain their own colonies, let alone threaten syndicate operations. What could they possibly do against hunter-killers? But as the days passed, more ships began disappearing. The Flesh Ripper went dark while investigating a supposed distress beacon. The Bone Crusher vanished after reporting contact with an unidentified vessel. The Terror Strike simply failed to report in at its scheduled time. What made the disappearances even more disturbing was their pattern. Every missing ship had participated in the Xerion Prime raid. Every crew had been present when the human colony was destroyed. It was as if something was systematically hunting down everyone who had been involved in that operation. The breakthrough came when the Voidhawk managed to send a partial transmission before it was destroyed. The message was fragmented and filled with static, but the final words were clear enough. Human ship. Impossible speed. They knew exactly where to. The transmission cut off in a burst of interference that suggested a massive explosion. Captain Scarthul stared at the data display in his command center, his four eyes studying the locations where his ships had vanished. There was definitely a pattern, but it wasn't random piracy or territorial disputes with other species. Someone was specifically targeting Kralix vessels, and they were doing it with a precision that suggested intimate knowledge of syndicate operations. "Bring me everything we have on human military capabilities," he ordered. "Ship designs, weapon specifications, fleet compositions, everything." When the reports arrived, Scarthul found them disappointing. Human vessels were adequate but unremarkable. Their weapons were effective but not exceptional. Their defensive systems were solid but hardly revolutionary. On paper, a single Kralix hunter-killer should be able to defeat 3 human ships without significant difficulty. Yet 7 of his best vessels had been destroyed in less than a month, Captain. His communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission on an open frequency. It's from a human." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be a human ship's bridge. The man sitting in the captain's chair was unremarkable in appearance, middle-aged with graying hair and tired eyes. But there was something in his expression that made Scarthul's predatory instincts stir uneasily. "Captain Scarthul of the Devourer," the human said, his voice calm and conversational. "My name is Marcus Chen. I believe we need to talk." Scarthul's mandibles clicked in amusement. "A human wishes to negotiate? How predictable. What do you want, Softskin? Are you here to beg for mercy for your pathetic species?" Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Actually, I wanted to thank you. The raid on Xerion Prime was very helpful for my purposes." "Helpful?" Scarthul was genuinely confused. "We destroyed your colony. We killed every human on that world." "Yes, you did," Marcus agreed. "And in doing so, you provided me with something invaluable: motivation. You see, Captain, my daughter lived on Xerion Prime. She was working on agricultural research, trying to develop new food sources for expanding human settlements. She was 26 years old and believed that diplomacy could solve any conflict." The Kralix captain felt a chill run through his chitinous plates. "Your daughter is dead. What does this matter now?" "It matters," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "because she was wrong about diplomacy. Some problems can't be solved with words. Some predators only understand one language." The transmission flickered for a moment, then stabilized. When it cleared, Marcus was holding up a familiar object, a Kralix command insignia, the kind worn by ship captains. This belonged to Captain Veltar of the Bloodfang. He's dead now, along with his entire crew. Their ship is currently drifting in an asteroid field near Proxima Station, broken into very small pieces. Scarthul's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Impossible. The Bloodfang was one of our finest vessels." "Was," Marcus emphasized. Past tense. Just like the Razor Claw, the Flesh Ripper, the Bone Crusher, the Terror Strike, and the Void Hawk. All past tense now. All very dead. The human leaned forward in his chair, and for the first time, Scarthul saw something in those tired eyes that made his predatory species' survival instincts scream warnings. "You wanted to know what makes humans dangerous, Captain? It's not our technology or our weapons or our physical capabilities. It's something much worse than that. We remember, we plan, and when you hurt our families, we become something that even the galaxy's apex predators should fear." Marcus held up another device, similar to the tracker beacon from the cantina, but larger and more complex. "This is a proximity mine, Captain. Human design, of course. I've placed approximately 40 of them along the hyperspace routes your ships use most frequently. They're cloaked, virtually undetectable, and they activate when they detect Kralix biosignatures." The implications hit Scarthul like a physical blow. "You're threatening to commit genocide." "No," Marcus corrected him. "I'm promising to commit justice. Every Kralix who participated in the Xerion Prime massacre is going to die. Their ships will be destroyed. Their crews will be eliminated. And when I'm finished with them, I'm going to start working my way up the command structure." The transmission began to fade, but Marcus's final words came through clearly. "Tell your syndicate leaders, Captain. Tell them that a lone human is hunting them. Tell them that we're not as weak as they thought. And tell them that some prey fights back." The screen went dark, leaving Captain Scarthul staring at his own reflection in the black display. For the first time in his long career as a predator, He felt something he had never experienced before. The cold touch of genuine fear. The Kralik Syndicate's high command gathered in emergency session aboard their fortress ship Apex Predator, a massive dreadnought that served as the mobile capital of their empire. The War Council chamber was a testament to their species' brutal philosophy. The walls were decorated with trophies from conquered worlds, and the chairs were carved from the bones of defeated enemies. Supreme Commander Thekvar dominated the center of the room, his massive frame making even the other Kraliks look small by comparison. His chitin plates were scarred from countless battles, and his forearms bore ritual tattoos marking his victories over other species. He had led the Syndicate for 30 years, turning them from a regional threat into the galaxy's most feared predatory force. "Explain to me," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone, "how a single human has destroyed 23 of our ships in 6 weeks." Captain Scarthul stood before the council, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. "Supreme Commander, this individual is unlike any human we have encountered. His methods are sophisticated, his planning is flawless, and his knowledge of our operations is disturbingly complete." "One human," War Master Groktel interjected, his mandibles clicking in disdain. "One soft skin with primitive technology has made fools of our entire navy. Our reputation is being damaged across the galaxy. Other species are beginning to question our dominance." Thekvar's four eyes focused on the tactical display showing the locations where Kralik ships had vanished. The pattern was becoming clear. This Marcus Chen was systematically eliminating everyone who had participated in the Zerion Prime raid, working his way through the fleet with methodical precision. "Show me the intelligence reports on this human," the Supreme Commander ordered. Scarthul activated a holographic display that showed Marcus Chen's profile, age 52, former human military officer with specialization in asymmetric warfare. Served in several colonial conflicts before retiring to civilian life. His daughter Sarah Chen was indeed a researcher at Zerion Prime. She was among the casualties. "His military record?" Thekvar asked. "Extensive combat experience in unconventional operations. Multiple commendations for tactical innovation. He was known for creating strategies that turned disadvantages into advantages. His human commanders considered him one of their most effective special operations officers." War Master Groktel's plates rattled with amusement. "Special operations? Human special operations are laughable compared to Kralik's hunter-killer tactics. What could this aging soft-skin possibly do that our warriors cannot counter?" The answer came sooner than expected. An alarm began blaring throughout the command chamber, and the fortress ship's defensive systems activated automatically. Red warning lights bathed the room as automated voices announced an incoming threat. "Report!" Thekvar roared. The tactical officer's voice was strained with disbelief. "Supreme Commander, we have a small human vessel approaching at impossible speed. It's moving too fast for our targeting systems to lock on, and it's somehow avoiding our sensor sweeps." "How many ships?" "Just one, sir. A modified human courier vessel. But its energy signature is off the charts. It's generating more power than a ship that size should be able to contain." Thekvar moved to the primary command console, his forearms working the controls with practiced efficiency. The main screen showed the exterior view of space around the Apex Predator. For a moment there was nothing but stars and the distant glow of a nearby nebula. Then they saw it. The human ship was small, barely a fraction of the size of a Kralik's hunter-killer. But it moved through space like a living thing. It twisted and rolled between the Apex Predator's defensive fire with an agility that defied physics. Energy beams that should have vaporized it passed harmlessly through spaces where it had been milliseconds before. "Impossible," War Master Groktel breathed. "No ship can maneuver like that. The gravitational forces would crush any organic crew." "Unless," Scarthul said quietly, "the crew is already expecting to die." The human vessel suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvers and hung motionless in space directly in front of the Apex Predator's main bridge. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a transmission came through on an open channel. Marcus Chen's face appeared on their screens, but he looked different now. Thinner, older, with the hollow-eyed appearance of someone who had not slept in weeks. His hair was completely gray, and there were lines in his face that spoke of grief transformed into something far more dangerous. "Supreme Commander Thekvar," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. "I've come to collect a debt," Thekvar's mandibles clicked in fury. You dare to approach our command ship? Our escorts will tear your pathetic vessel apart. Marcus smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression any of the Kraliks had ever seen on a human face. Your escorts are already dead. Check your tactical display. The bridge crew worked frantically at their controls, and the truth became apparent. 8 Kraliks escort ships that had been patrolling around the apex predator were now showing as disabled. Their power signatures were dark, their communications silent. When? Thekvar demanded. When did you destroy them? I didn't destroy them, Marcus replied. I disabled them. Every crew member is unconscious but alive. They'll wake up in a few hours with splitting headaches and damaged pride, but they'll live. You see, Commander, they weren't at Zerion Prime. They're not on my list. War Master Groktel stepped forward, his forearms reaching for his weapons. What do you want, human? Marcus's eyes focused on Groktel with laser intensity. You, actually. You were the one who gave the order to execute the civilians after the colony surrendered. You personally killed 17 researchers who were trying to evacuate wounded colonists. Groktel's plates rattled with nervous energy. They were enemies of the Syndicate. We do not take prisoners. No, Marcus agreed. You don't. But I do. The human ship suddenly accelerated toward the apex predator at a speed that should have been suicide. The Kralix vessel's point defense systems opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams and projectile weapons. But somehow, impossibly, the small human ship slipped through the defensive fire like water flowing around rocks. At the last possible moment, Marcus's ship stopped mere meters from the apex predator's hull. A docking tube extended from the human vessel and attached itself to an airlock with mechanical precision. How? Scarthel whispered. How did he penetrate our defenses? Marcus's voice came through the comm system, now speaking from somewhere inside their own ship. Because I've been studying your tactics for 3 months. I know every weakness in your defensive patterns, every blind spot in your sensor coverage, every flaw in your ship design. You're predators, but you've been hunting prey that couldn't fight back. You forgot that some prey learns. Alarms began sounding throughout the fortress ship as automated systems detected unauthorized boarding. Security teams rushed toward the breach point, their weapons charged and ready. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued, his voice echoing through the corridors as he moved deeper into the ship. I'm going to work my way through this vessel and eliminate every single Kralix who participated in the Zerion Prime massacre. Your regular crew members who weren't involved will be spared. But the butchers who killed my daughter and her colleagues are going to face justice. Supreme Commander Thekvar drew his own weapons, massive energy cannons that could punch through armored bulkheads. You are 1 human against 3,000 Kralix warriors. You cannot possibly... His words were cut off by an explosion somewhere in the ship's lower levels. Emergency lighting activated as main power flickered. Then another explosion, closer this time. You're thinking like a predator, Marcus's voice said, now coming from multiple locations simultaneously. You're assuming this is about strength and numbers. But this isn't a battle, Commander. This is an execution, and I've had months to prepare. The lights went out completely, plunging the command center into darkness. In the emergency lighting that followed, the Kralix leadership found themselves facing a truth they had never considered. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. And sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one with nothing left to lose. The corridors of the apex predator had become a maze of shadows and terror. Emergency lighting cast eerie red glows that created dancing phantoms on the walls, while the steady pulse of alarm klaxons provided a rhythm for the chaos that had erupted throughout the massive vessel. Marcus Chen moved through the ship like a ghost, using service tunnels and maintenance shafts that the Kralix had never considered security risks. His modified armor was equipped with sound dampeners and visual camouflage that made him nearly invisible in the dim emergency lighting. But more importantly, he carried with him detailed schematics of the ship that he had acquired through months of careful intelligence gathering. Every step was calculated, every movement planned. This wasn't a rampage driven by emotion. It was a surgical operation conducted with the precision of a master craftsman. In the command center, Supreme Commander Thekvar tried to coordinate a response to the invasion, but his communications with security teams kept cutting out. Squad after squad reported engaging the intruder, only to fall silent moments later. Status report, he demanded, his forearms working frantically at the command console. Captain Scarthul monitored the security feeds, watching in growing horror as the situation deteriorated. "Sir, we've lost contact with security. Teams Alpha through Delta. Team Epsilon is reporting casualties." The main tactical display showed the humans' progress through the ship as a series of red markers indicating disabled security systems and eliminated personnel, but the pattern made no sense from a military perspective. Instead of heading for strategic targets like the bridge or engineering, Marcus was following what appeared to be a predetermined route through seemingly random sections of the vessel. "What is he doing?" War Master Groktel demanded. "Why isn't he trying to capture the bridge or disable our engines?" Scarthul studied the pattern more carefully, and the horrible truth began to dawn on him. "He's not trying to capture the ship, War Master. He's hunting specific individuals. Look at the locations he's targeting." The realization hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Every section that Marcus had visited corresponded to quarters or duty stations assigned to personnel who had participated in the Zirian Prime raid. He wasn't conducting a military operation. He was carrying out a series of targeted assassinations. "Impossible," Tekvar growled. "How could he know the duty assignments of specific crew members? That information is classified at the highest levels." His answer came in the form of a new transmission that somehow overrode their secure communications channels. Marcus's voice filled the bridge, speaking with the calm tone of someone reading a shopping list. "Commander Velkorl, found in Section 7, Level 5. Participated in the execution of 15 civilian researchers. Status eliminated. Lieutenant Shartek, found in Section 3, Level 7. Ordered the bombing of the colony's medical facility while it still contained patients. Status eliminated." The list continued, each name accompanied by specific details about that individual's actions during the raid and their current status aboard Marcus's growing tally of eliminated targets. The precision was terrifying. Somehow this lone human had not only identified every single participant in the massacre, but had also tracked their current locations aboard the ship. "Stop him," Tekvar roared. "Send every available security team. Seal the bulkheads! Vent the atmosphere if necessary." But as they watched, another security team's signals disappeared from the tactical display. Then another. Marcus was moving through their forces like a scythe through wheat, and nothing they threw at him seemed to slow him down. War Master Groktel stepped forward, his weapons charged and his armor gleaming in the emergency lighting. "Enough of this. I will end this human personally." "War Master, no," Scarthul warned. "We don't understand what we're dealing with. This human is operating beyond normal parameters." But Groktel was already moving toward the exit, his predatory instincts driving him to face this threat directly. "I have killed thousands of enemies in personal combat. One aging human will not be my first defeat." He left the bridge with a squad of elite guards following the internal sensors toward Marcus's last known position. The War Master was confident in his abilities. He had been bred for combat, trained from birth to be the perfect killing machine. His forearms could wield multiple weapons simultaneously. His chitinous armor could deflect most small arms fire, and his predatory reflexes were faster than any human could match. The confrontation came in a large cargo bay deep in the ship's hull. Groktel and his guards entered the chamber with weapons ready, their enhanced vision scanning for any sign of their target. The bay was filled with supply containers and machinery, creating numerous hiding spots and tactical advantages. "Human," Groktel called out, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Face me, let us settle this with honor." Marcus's voice came from somewhere in the shadows, calm and conversational. "Honor? You want to talk about honor after what you did to those colonists?" "They were enemies," Groktel replied, moving cautiously between the containers. "In war there are no innocents." "My daughter was a botanist," Marcus said, his voice now coming from a different direction. "She was working on developing drought-resistant crops to help feed refugee populations. Tell me, War Master, what threat did she pose to your mighty syndicate?" Groktel's guards spread out around the cargo bay, their weapons sweeping for targets. But the shadows seemed to move independently, and their thermal sensors picked up nothing but false readings. "She was human," Groktel said simply. That was threat enough. The attack came without warning. One of the guards simply collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. Then another. Groktel spun around, trying to track the source of the assault. But his remaining guards were falling one by one to an enemy he couldn't see or hear. When the last guard fell, Groktel found himself alone in the cargo bay with a human who seemed to materialize from the shadows, like a nightmare given form. Marcus Chen stood 15 meters away, and for the first time Groktel could see him clearly. The human was smaller than the War Master, lacking the natural weapons and armor that made Kralik so formidable in combat. But there was something in his stance, something in his eyes, that made Groktel's predatory instincts scream warnings. "Your guards are unconscious," Marcus said quietly. "They'll live." They weren't at Zarian Prime. Groktel raised his 4 weapons, energy cannons that could punch through armored vehicles. "But I was. And I regret nothing." "I know," Marcus replied. "That's why you're going to die." The War Master opened fire, filling the cargo bay with deadly energy beams. His aim was perfect, his reactions were lightning fast, and his weapons were powerful enough to vaporize a human completely. Every shot missed. Marcus moved like water, flowing between the energy beams with an impossible grace. He didn't seem to be dodging so much as anticipating, as if he could see the War Master's intentions before Groktel himself was aware of them. In seconds, Marcus had closed the distance between them. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of why humans had survived and thrived on a world filled with predators that were faster, stronger, and better armed than they were. Humans were problem solvers. They were tool users. They were creatures who won fights not through superior physical capabilities, but through superior thinking. When it was over, War Master Groktel lay unconscious on the cargo bay floor, his weapons scattered and his armor cracked. Marcus stood over him, holding a small device that he placed carefully on the Kralix's chest. "This is a neural disruptor," he said, though the War Master couldn't hear him. "Human medical technology. It will put you into a coma for approximately 72 hours, then cause complete cardiac failure. You'll have time to think about what you did to those colonists before you die." Marcus activated his communication system and spoke to the bridge crew who he knew were monitoring. "One down, Supreme Commander. I'm coming for the rest of them. And then I'm coming for you." The hunt continued. The emergency council session aboard the Apex Predator was unlike anything in the Kralik Syndicate's history. For the first time in their existence as a spacefaring species, they were discussing retreat from a single enemy combatant. Supreme Commander Thekvar paced the length of the war room, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he tried to process the impossible situation. Half of his command staff was dead or missing. War Master Groktel had been found in a coma that would apparently kill him within days. And somehow a lone human continued to move through their most secure vessel like he owned it. "Explain to me," Thekvar demanded, "how our sensors cannot locate one human on our own ship." Chief Security Officer Bracton, normally unflappable, was showing signs of severe stress. His chitinous plates were darkened with perspiration, and his mandibles clicked nervously as he consulted his tactical displays. "Sir, we believe he's using our own ship systems against us. Somehow he's accessed our environmental controls, our internal communications, even our security networks. It's as if he has administrator-level access to all of our technology." Captain Scarthole studied the data feeds with growing unease. "That should be impossible. Our systems use quantum encryption that would take centuries to break, even with advanced computational resources. Unless," a new voice said from the room's communication system, "you understand that humans don't always solve problems the way you expect them to." Every weapon in the room immediately swiveled toward the speakers. But of course Marcus wasn't actually there. His voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the ship itself had become his ally. "You see, Commander," Marcus continued, his tone conversational despite the circumstances, "you made a fundamental error in understanding human capabilities. You assumed that because we don't have natural claws or armor, we must be technologically inferior, but the truth is we've had to become very good at making things work for us." Thekvar snarled into the comm system. "What do you want, human? Name your terms. The Syndicate is willing to negotiate." The laughter that came through the speakers was cold and humorless. "Negotiate? That's interesting. I don't remember you offering to negotiate. When you were bombing civilian shelters on Zarian Prime, I don't recall any diplomatic discussions. When you were executing researchers who had already surrendered, that was different," Thekvar replied. "That was military action against a human colony in disputed territory." "My daughter was growing food," Marcus said, and for the first time, real emotion crept into his voice. She was developing crops that could grow in harsh environments to help feed refugee populations across the galaxy. She had never held a weapon in her life. She believed that science could solve the problems that politics couldn't. The communication system went silent for a moment. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice once more under perfect control. "But you taught me something valuable, Commander. You taught me that sometimes problems can only be solved through the application of overwhelming force. So thank you for that lesson." Bracton was frantically working his controls, trying to trace the source of the transmission. "Sir, he's not using our communication channels. I think he's actually speaking to us through the environmental systems themselves. He's turned the entire ship into a broadcasting network." "Clever," Scarthel admitted grudgingly. "But why is he wasting time talking? If he wanted to kill us all, he could have done it by now." The answer came immediately. "Because I want you to understand something before you die, Captain. I want you to know exactly why you're going to lose this fight." New alarms began sounding throughout the ship, different from the security alerts they had been hearing. These were engineering alarms indicating critical system failures in multiple sections of the vessel. "What's happening?" Thekvar demanded. Bracton's face went pale as he read his displays. "Sir, we're losing power to non-essential systems. Life support is switching to emergency mode. Our weapon systems are showing massive power drains." "He's not trying to destroy the ship," Scarthel realized with growing horror. "He's taking control of it." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "You see, the thing about humans is that we're very good at adapting existing systems to serve our purposes. Your ship's computer systems are actually quite sophisticated, but they were designed by a species that thinks in terms of direct confrontation. You never considered that someone might approach the problem sideways." The main tactical display flickered and changed, now showing a detailed schematic of the apex predator, with various systems highlighted in red. As they watched, more and more sections began changing color, indicating that they were falling under external control. "For the past 4 hours," Marcus continued, "while you've been trying to hunt me down with security teams, I've been systematically gaining access to your ship's core systems. I started with the environmental controls, moved on to communications, then power distribution, and finally, your navigation systems." Thekvar felt a chill run through his massive frame. "Navigation systems?" "Yes. It's amazing what you can do when you understand how to speak to a computer in its own language. Your ship's AI is actually quite cooperative once you know how to ask it nicely." The ship's main engine suddenly fired, causing everyone in the command center to stagger as the apex predator began to accelerate. But they weren't moving toward any destination that Thekvar had authorized. "Where are you taking us?" the Supreme Commander demanded. "Home," Marcus replied simply. "We're going to the Kralix homeworld. I thought it would be appropriate for your government to see what happens to predators who pick the wrong prey." The implications of this statement hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The apex predator wasn't just a warship. It was the mobile command center of the entire syndicate. It contained the leadership of their military, their strategic databases, their communication networks. If it were to be destroyed or captured at the Kralix homeworld, it would be a devastating blow to their entire civilization. "You cannot seriously intend to attack our homeworld with a single ship," Scarthel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Attack?" Marcus sounded genuinely surprised. "Oh, Captain, you still don't understand what's happening here. I'm not going to attack anything. I'm going to give a demonstration." The ship's internal lights began to flicker in a pattern that seemed almost like Morse code. Throughout the vessel, automated systems started shutting down and reactivating in sequence, creating a symphony of mechanical sounds that somehow seemed coordinated and purposeful. "You wanted to know what makes humans dangerous," Marcus said. "It's not our strength or our speed or our natural weapons. It's our ability to turn any environment into a weapon. It's our talent for making allies out of things that weren't designed to be allies." The realization struck Bracton first. "Sir, he's not just controlling our ship. He's communicating with other systems. The pattern in the lights, the sequence of shutdowns. He's broadcasting something." "What kind of message?" Thekvar asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Marcus answered the question himself. "I'm sending the complete records of the Xerion Prime massacre to every communication relay in this sector. Ship logs, personal recordings, tactical analyses. I'm also transmitting the location and defensive capabilities of every Kralix military installation that your ship's databases contain." The command center fell silent except for the humming of machinery and the steady pulse of alarms. The full scope of what was happening began to dawn on them. This wasn't just about revenge for a single colony. This was about fundamentally changing the balance of power in the galaxy. Every species that you've terrorized, every world that you've conquered, every civilization that has lived in fear of the Kralik Syndicate is going to receive a complete intelligence package about your military capabilities, Marcus continued. They're going to learn exactly how you operate, where your weaknesses are, and most importantly, they're going to see that you can be beaten. You're declaring war on our entire species, Thekvar said, his voice hollow with the weight of understanding. No, Marcus corrected him. You declared war on mine when you murdered innocent civilians. I'm just evening the odds. The apex predator continued its journey toward the Kralik's homeworld, carrying with it a cargo more dangerous than any weapon. The knowledge that the galaxy's apex predators could be hunted, defeated, and humbled by a single human with nothing left to lose. The Kralik's homeworld of Sekthar Prime was a fortress planet, its surface scarred by millennia of warfare and industrial expansion. Massive defense platforms orbited the world like mechanical moons, their weapon arrays capable of reducing entire fleets to space dust. The planet's cities were built like fortifications, with towering spires that served as both administrative centers and military command posts. It was here that the Kralik's High Senate convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across their empire. The apex predator was approaching the homeworld, but something was terribly wrong. The flagship wasn't responding to communication attempts, its course was erratic, and long-range sensors indicated that it was broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. High Senator Vexthol, ancient even by Kralik standards, stood before the assembled leadership with data tablets clutched in 3 of his 4 hands. His scarred carapace told the story of a lifetime spent in combat, and his eyes held the cold intelligence that had made him one of the Syndicate's most effective strategists. Senators, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. A single human has somehow compromised our primary command. Vessel and is broadcasting classified intelligence to every inhabited system within 100 light years. The massive chamber erupted in angry clicks and chittering as dozens of senators demanded explanations. The Kraliks had built their empire on the principle of overwhelming superiority. They were the galaxy's apex predators, and the very idea that one member of an inferior species could threaten their entire civilization was almost incomprehensible. Senator Kraltalk, military liaison to the High Senate, stood to address the assembly. Surely this is an exaggeration. One human, regardless of his capabilities, cannot pose a significant threat to our empire. Our military consists of over 10,000 vessels and controls 73 star systems. And yet, Vexthul replied grimly, that one human has already cost us 57 ships and is currently using our own flagship to broadcast our military secrets to our enemies. Perhaps it is time we reconsider our assumptions about human capabilities. The debate was interrupted by a priority communication from the orbital defense platforms. The commander of the home fleet, Admiral Thetkorl, appeared on the chamber's main display with urgent news. High Senators, the apex predator has entered our system and is approaching the planet. Supreme Commander Thekvar is alive, but reports that the ship is under the control of the human terrorist. More importantly, we are detecting massive communication arrays that have been constructed from the ship's own systems. The vessel is broadcasting continuously on thousands of different frequencies. Senator Vexthul felt his blood chill. What kind of broadcasts? Everything, Admiral Thetkorl replied, his voice heavy with implications. Ship movements, base locations, defensive capabilities, personnel records, strategic plans. Decades of classified intelligence are being transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. The full scope of the disaster began to sink in. The Kralik's empire had maintained its dominance not just through military might, but through the carefully cultivated fear of their superior capabilities. They had allowed other species to believe that the Kraliks were unbeatable, unstoppable, and all-knowing. That mystique was now being systematically destroyed by a human who seemed to understand exactly how to hurt them most effectively. There's more, the Admiral continued. Long-range communications are reporting unusual activity in multiple sectors. Several species that have been subjugated by the Syndicate are mobilizing their fleets. It appears that they are coordinating some kind of joint response. As if summoned by their conversation, a new voice joined the communication channel. Marcus Chen's face appeared on a secondary screen, speaking from what was clearly the bridge of the apex predator. Behind him, they could see Kralix officers standing at their stations, apparently unharmed but clearly under duress. "Senators of the Kralix High Government," Marcus said formally. "My name is Marcus Chen. I believe we have matters to discuss." The chamber fell silent. Never in their history had a member of another species addressed the High Senate directly, let alone while holding their most important military asset hostage. Senator Kraltok recovered first, his mandibles clicking with barely contained fury. "Human, you will return our vessel immediately and surrender yourself for judgment. Your actions constitute acts of war against the Kralix Syndicate." Marcus smiled, and the expression sent chills through every senator present. "Acts of war? How interesting. I wasn't aware that seeking justice for mass murder constituted a war crime. But then again, I suppose perspective is important." "You have destroyed our ships and killed our personnel," Vexthul interjected. "These are clearly hostile actions." "I have eliminated specific individuals who participated in the massacre of innocent civilians," Marcus corrected. "I have been very careful to spare anyone who wasn't directly involved in the Xerian Prime raid. Your regular naval personnel are alive and unharmed. This has never been about genocide or conquest. This has been about justice." "Justice!" Senator Kraltok's voice rose to a roar. "You speak of justice while holding our flagship hostage? You are a terrorist and a criminal." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Senator, your forces destroyed an agricultural research station, executed surrendering civilians, and bombed medical facilities that contained wounded colonists. If I am a terrorist for seeking accountability for those actions, then what does that make you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time in their history, the Kralix were being forced to defend their actions rather than simply impose their will through superior firepower. The human colony was in disputed territory. Vexthul said carefully, "Our actions were within the accepted parameters of military engagement." "Accepted by whom?" Marcus asked. "Your daughter wasn't a combatant. None of the researchers were armed. They were growing food, Senator. Food to help feed refugee populations displaced by wars like yours." Admiral Thetkorl interrupted the discussion with urgent news. "Senators were detecting incoming hyperspace signatures. Multiple fleets are approaching the system." The tactical display updated to show dozens of ships emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Sekthar Prime system. As the sensors resolved the signatures, the truth became clear. These were vessels from species that the Kralix had conquered or intimidated over the years. Humans, yes, but also Zephyrians, Vulcani, Etherians, and a dozen other species. "It appears," Marcus said calmly, "that your former victims have decided to pay you a visit. Funny how quickly alliances can form when people have a common enemy." "This is impossible," Senator Kraltok sputtered. "These species lack the military coordination to mount a joint operation. They've never worked together before." "You're right," Marcus agreed. "They've never had detailed intelligence about Kralix military capabilities before. They've never known exactly where your bases were located, what your defensive weaknesses were, or how your command structure operated. But now they do." The implications crashed over the High Senate like a tsunami. Every strategic advantage the Kralix had carefully built over centuries was now in the hands of their enemies. Every secret base, every hidden weapon, every tactical doctrine was being shared among species that had every reason to want revenge. "You've destroyed us," Vexthul said quietly. "Even if we defeat this fleet, even if we recapture our ship, the damage is done. Our enemies now know everything." Marcus nodded solemnly. "That was the point, Senator. You built your empire on fear and intimidation, on the belief that you were untouchable. But empires built on fear have a fundamental weakness. They collapse the moment people stop being afraid." The massive alien fleets continued to approach Sekthar Prime, and for the first time in their history, the Kralix found themselves facing enemies who knew exactly how to hurt them. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space around Sekthar Prime had become a graveyard of ambitions. The combined fleet of formerly subjugated species hung in formation just outside the range of the planet's defense platforms, their ships representing dozens of different civilizations united by a common purpose. The sight was unprecedented in galactic history. Natural enemies standing together against a greater threat. Aboard the apex predator, Marcus Chen stood on the bridge surrounded by Kralix officers who had once been his enemies. but now seemed more like reluctant colleagues. Supreme Commander Thekvar sat in his command chair, but his posture made it clear that he was no longer in control of his own vessel. "The Allied fleet is requesting permission to approach," reported the communications officer, a young Kralix whose mandibles trembled as he spoke. Marcus looked at Thekvar with an expression that might have been pity. "Your choice, Commander. You can order your defense platforms to open fire on the Allied fleet, which will certainly start a war that your empire cannot win. Or you can listen to what they have to say." "What they have to say?" Thekvar's 4 eyes blazed with fury. "They are here to destroy us, to tear apart everything we have built." "Are they?" Marcus asked quietly. "Or are they here because they finally have enough information to demand accountability for centuries of oppression?" The tactical display showed the massive Allied fleet, maintaining a respectful distance from the defense platforms. They were clearly prepared for battle, but they hadn't taken aggressive positions. Instead, they seemed to be waiting. Captain Scarthul, who had remained silent throughout the crisis, finally spoke. "They're not attacking. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have opened fire immediately. They have the advantage of numbers and surprise." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Captain Scarthul understands something that your High Senate seems to have missed. This isn't about revenge. This is about justice. There's a difference." A new communication channel opened, and the main screen filled with the image of Fleet Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Human Colonial Navy. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and intelligent eyes that held both determination and restraint. "Supreme Commander Thekvar," she said formally, "I am Admiral Martinez, speaking on behalf of the Allied Systems Coalition. We are here to discuss the future of galactic peace and security." Thekvar's mandibles clicked with bitter amusement. "Peace? You bring a war fleet to our homeworld and speak of peace?" "We bring a deterrent fleet," Admiral Martinez corrected. "Thanks to the intelligence provided by Marcus Chen, we now have a complete understanding of Kralix's military capabilities and strategic positions. We know exactly how outmatched you are in a prolonged conflict." The truth of her words was displayed on the tactical screens throughout the Kralix defense network. The Allied fleet wasn't just large. It was strategically positioned to exploit every weakness in the home system's defenses. The intelligence Marcus had broadcast hadn't just revealed Kralix secrets to their enemies. It had allowed those enemies to plan the perfect assault. "What do you want?" Thekvar asked, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitable defeat. Admiral Martinez's expression softened slightly. "We want what any civilized species wants, an end to unprovoked aggression, accountability for war crimes, and guarantees that the actions at Zerion Prime will never be repeated." "You want us to surrender our sovereignty?" the Supreme Commander replied. "We want you to join the galactic community as equals rather than trying to dominate it as conquerors," she clarified. "The Kralix have advanced technology and military expertise that could benefit everyone if applied constructively rather than destructively." Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly across the communication channel. "Admiral, permission to address the Kralix High Senate directly?" "Granted, Mr. Chen." The main communication array refocused to show the interior of the High Senate chamber on Sector Prime. Dozens of alien senators looked up at the screens, showing the human who had brought their empire to its knees. "Senators," Marcus began, his voice calm and respectful. "6 months ago, your forces destroyed a peaceful research colony and murdered everyone there, including my daughter. You did this because you could, because you believed that might makes right, and because you thought there would be no consequences." The chamber was silent. Every senator focused on his words. "I could have responded with hatred. I could have sought the destruction of your entire species. Instead, I chose to seek justice for specific crimes committed by specific individuals. Every Kralix who participated in the Zerion Prime massacre has been held accountable. The rest of your people remain unharmed." Senator Vexthul stood slowly. "And what of our empire? What of our sovereignty?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time since this crisis began, there was genuine warmth in the expression. "Your empire was built on the suffering of others. Your sovereignty was maintained through fear and intimidation. Those things are ending, but that doesn't mean your civilization has to end." He gestured toward the tactical display showing the Allied fleet. "Every species represented in that fleet has something valuable to offer. The Zephyrians are master traders and diplomats. The Vulcani are incredible engineers. The Etherians are unparalleled scientists. Humans are problem solvers. And the Kralix? Senator Kraltalk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Kralix are warriors, Marcus replied simply. The galaxy needs warriors, but it needs warriors who fight to protect the innocent, rather than prey upon them. Your military expertise could be invaluable in defending against external threats, exploring dangerous regions of space, or providing security for trade routes. Admiral Martinez's voice joined the conversation. The Allied Systems Coalition is prepared to offer the Kralix Syndicate full membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Your military forces would be integrated into a joint defense network. Your technology would be shared for mutual benefit. Your people would have access to the resources and opportunities of dozens of worlds. And in return? Thegvar asked. In return, Marcus said, you stop being predators and start being protectors. You use your strength to defend those who cannot defend themselves. You become the kind of warriors that the galaxy can respect rather than fear. The negotiations that followed took several days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Kralix had two choices: join the galactic community as equals or face destruction by the combined forces of their former victims. It wasn't a difficult decision once their pride had been set aside. 6 months later, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the research station that had been built in orbit around Zerion Prime. The planet below was being terraformed again, but this time as a joint project involving multiple species. Kralix engineers worked alongside human scientists, Zephyrian diplomats coordinated with Vulcani technicians, and the agricultural research that Sarah had died trying to complete was finally bearing fruit. The memorial garden in the station's central hub contained the names of everyone who had died in the massacre. Sarah Chen's name was carved in simple letters on a stone plaque surrounded by flowering plants from a dozen different worlds. She would have been proud, a voice said behind him. Marcus turned to see Admiral Martinez approaching, now serving as the Coalition's liaison to the reformed Kralix government. Would she? Marcus asked. I brought her empire to its knees and forced an entire species to change their fundamental nature. I'm not sure that's what she would have wanted. You gave them a choice, Martinez replied. You could have destroyed them, but instead you offered them redemption. That's exactly what she would have wanted. Marcus looked back at the memorial garden, where Kralix children were now playing alongside human children, their laughter echoing through the corridors that had once been filled with alarms and gunfire. Maybe, he said quietly, maybe she would have approved. In the end, the galaxy learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is not the one with the biggest claws or the strongest armor. Sometimes it's the one who refuses to give up, who turns every disadvantage into an advantage, and who understands that real strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when not to. The Kralix had laughed at the lone human who dared to hunt them. They weren't laughing anymore. They were too busy learning what it meant to be worthy of respect rather than fear. And in the memorial garden on Zerion Prime Station, the flowers continued to grow.